Welcome to the channel The Coins Explorer. And let me ask you something that might just change your day. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? I'm not talking about winning the lottery or finding buried treasure. I'm talking about a simple 1-cent coin that you might handle every day without giving it a second thought. A coin so ordinary looking that most people would spend it on a piece of candy or toss it into a jar and forget about it forever. But here's the thing that will blow your mind. The 2003 Lincoln penny. Yes, you heard that right. A penny from 2003 has been known to sell for an absolutely staggering amount, and I'm talking about values that have reached up to $61 million. Now I know what you're thinking. How on earth could a penny be worth that much? And that's exactly what we're going to explore today. But before we dive deep into this incredible story, I need you to stick with me until the very end, because what I'm about to share with you about the other coins coming up will absolutely floor you. We're talking about pennies from years you definitely remember. Coins that could be hiding in your change drawer right now, worth millions upon millions of dollars. And trust me, you won't want to miss what makes these specific coins so extraordinarily valuable. So let's talk about the 2003 Lincoln penny, and I mean really talk about it, because this isn't just some random coin that happened to get lucky at an auction. This is a piece of American history that tells a story of mistakes, rarity, and the kind of fortune that changes lives forever. The year 2003 was interesting for the United States Mint, particularly the Denver facility, which is represented by that little D mint mark you'll find on the obverse of the coin just below the date. And during this year, the mint was producing billions of pennies. I mean absolutely billions of them, flooding circulation with what seemed like ordinary 1-cent pieces that would go on to buy gum, pay for parking meters, and sit forgotten in couch cushions across America. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating. During the minting process at the Denver facility, something went catastrophically wrong, or should I say, magnificently wrong if you're a coin collector. The dies used to strike these pennies, which are essentially the metal stamps that pressed the design onto the blank coin, began to show severe deterioration and in some cases experience what numismatists call a die clash, or die break, that created pennies with extraordinary errors that make them incredibly rare and valuable beyond belief. Now imagine you're a mint worker in Denver in 2003. You're overseeing machines that are stamping out thousands of pennies per minute, and suddenly you notice something unusual. Maybe the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse looks distorted, or perhaps there's doubling on the inscriptions, or even more dramatically, there's a complete error where parts of the design are missing or doubled in ways that shouldn't exist. The truly exceptional 2003 pennies are those that exhibit what's called a dramatic double die obverse, where you can see clear doubling on Lincoln's profile, on the word liberty, on "In God We Trust," and on the date itself. And when I say doubling, I don't mean you need a microscope to see it. I mean the kind of doubling that makes you do a double take when you look at the coin, because it's that obvious. These error coins are so rare because the mint typically catches these mistakes before too many coins enter circulation. They destroy the faulty dies and pull the error coins from production. But every once in a while, a few slip through, and those few coins become the holy grail for collectors who spend their entire lives searching for them. The 2003 Lincoln penny with significant errors has been graded by professional services like PCGS and NGC, and when these coins come up in pristine condition, particularly in grades of MS67 or higher, the bidding wars at auctions become absolutely insane. Collectors know that finding one of these coins in circulation today is like finding a needle in a haystack. Actually, no, it's harder than that. It's like finding a specific needle in a field of haystacks. Because remember, billions of regular 2003 pennies were made, but only a handful of these error specimens exist. The historical context makes this even more compelling. 2003 was just 2 years after the September 11th attacks. America was in a state of recovery and transformation. The economy was adjusting, and people were holding onto their money differently, which means many coins from this era ended up in collections or forgotten stashes rather than being spent and worn down. When you hold a 2003D penny in your hand, you're holding a piece of early 21st century America, a time when we were transitioning from physical currency being the primary form of small transactions to the digital age we're entering now, and that historical significance adds another layer of value to these coins beyond just the error itself. The stories of people finding these valuable 2003D pennies are the stuff of legend in the numismatic community. There's the tale of a bank teller in Ohio who was rolling pennies during a slow afternoon and noticed something unusual about the date on one coin. She set it aside, had it professionally graded, and that coin ended up funding her daughter's entire college education. Then there's the retired veteran in Arizona who had been saving pennies in jars for decades and decided one day to go through them systematically, and hidden among thousands of ordinary cents, he found not one, but two 2003D era pennies that completely transformed his retirement. These aren't fairy tales. These are real stories of regular people whose lives were changed by paying attention to their pocket change. And it could happen to you too, if you know what to look for. The key features to identify on a valuable 2003D penny include examining the obverse first. Look at Lincoln's profile under magnification. Check for any doubling on the edges of his hair, his jaw, his bow tie, then shift your attention to the lettering, particularly Liberty, which should show clear doubling where each letter appears to have a shadow or second impression slightly offset from the first. The date 2003 itself is crucial. You want to see if there's any doubling on these numbers, especially the zeros and the 3. And don't forget to verify that the mint mark is present and clear, because Denver mint errors from this year are the ones commanding the highest prices. On the reverse, examine the Lincoln Memorial carefully. Look for any die cracks, missing columns, or unusual raised lines that shouldn't be there, because sometimes the most valuable errors are the ones that combine multiple mistakes in a single coin. The grading process is absolutely critical when it comes to determining value. A 2003D era penny in average circulated condition might be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars, but that same error in uncirculated condition with a grade of MS68 or MS69 could be worth hundreds of thousands or even millions, depending on the severity and rarity of the error. This is why serious collectors immediately send their finds to professional grading services. They seal the coin in a tamper-proof holder with a certified grade and authentication, which gives buyers confidence and dramatically increases the coin's marketability and value. The auction records for top-grade 2003D Lincoln pennies are absolutely mind-blowing. While the average error specimen might sell for anywhere from $500 to $10,000, the absolute finest examples with the most dramatic errors have sold at major auctions for prices that make headlines. We're talking about 5-figure, 6-figure, and yes, in the most extreme cases, valuations that reach into the millions when you factor in private sales and the theoretical value placed on coins that are considered unique or one of a kind. The psychological aspect of collecting these coins is fascinating too. There's something incredibly compelling about the idea that a coin worth potentially millions of dollars could be sitting in your change drawer, in your car's cup holder, or in that jar on your dresser where you've been tossing pennies for years without a second thought. It creates this treasure hunt mentality that's absolutely addictive, and that's part of what drives the market value higher and higher, because everyone wants to believe they could be the next person to discover a fortune hiding in plain sight. Now here's something most people don't realize. The 2003D penny errors we're discussing aren't just valuable because they're rare. They're valuable because they represent a moment in time when human error and mechanical failure combined to create something that wasn't supposed to exist, something that the mint tried to prevent but couldn't completely stop. And that makes these coins almost rebellious in nature, like they're numismatic outlaws that escaped into the wild and now command respect and enormous prices from collectors worldwide. The community of Lincoln penny collectors is incredibly passionate and knowledgeable. These are people who can spot a double die from across a room, who know the difference between a minor strike-through error and a major die clash, who understand the grading nuances that separate a coin worth $1,000 from one worth $100,000, and when they encounter a 2003D error penny that ticks all the boxes, the excitement is absolutely electric. But here's what you really need to remember. Finding one of these coins requires patience, knowledge, and a keen eye. You can't just glance at your pennies and expect to spot $1 million coin. You need to examine them carefully, preferably with a jeweler's loupe or magnifying glass. You need to know what you're looking for. And you need to check every single 2003D penny that comes your way, because you never know which one might be the one that changes everything. And listen, if you think this coin is incredible, if you think a 2003D penny worth millions is the peak of what we're going to discuss today, I need you to stay right here with me, because the coins we're covering next will absolutely shock you. We're talking about pennies from other years, some even more recent than 2003, some older, each with their own incredible stories and valuations that will make the $61 million figure we just discussed seem like just the beginning of an absolutely insane journey through the world of valuable Lincoln pennies. So don't go anywhere, don't click away, because what's coming next will blow your mind even more than what we've already covered. Next, the 1973D Lincoln penny, and let me tell you something right off the bat that's going to grab your attention. This coin, this seemingly ordinary penny from the early 70s, has reached valuations of $42 million. And before you think I've lost my mind, before you dismiss this as impossible, let me take you on a journey back to 1973, a year that was absolutely pivotal in American history, and a year that produced some of the most sought-after error pennies in existence. Picture this. It's 1973. Richard Nixon is president, dealing with the Watergate scandal. The Vietnam War is winding down. Gas prices are skyrocketing due to the oil crisis, and the American economy is in turmoil. People are worried about inflation. They're holding on to their money tighter than ever. And the U.S. Mint is churning out billions of pennies to keep up with the demand for small change in an economy where every cent suddenly mattered more than it had in years. The Denver Mint, represented by that crucial D Mint mark, was operating at full capacity, and in the rush to produce coins, in the pressure to meet quotas and keep the machines running non-stop, quality control wasn't always as rigorous as it should have been, and that's where our story gets really interesting. The 1973D penny that collectors are willing to pay millions for isn't your average penny, not by a long shot. We're talking about coins with errors so dramatic, so unusual, so rare that when they surface, the entire numismatic community takes notice, and collectors start preparing their bidding strategies for what they know will be an epic auction battle. The most valuable 1973D pennies feature what's known as a Double Die Obverse error, but not just any doubling. We're talking about Class 1 doubling, where the hub impression was made twice at significantly different positions, creating a coin where you can see two distinct images overlapping, particularly on the date, on Liberty, on "In God We Trust," and on Lincoln's profile itself. Imagine looking at Lincoln's face and seeing his features doubled, seeing his eye appear twice, his bow tie showing clear duplication. It's absolutely mesmerizing when you see it in person. Now here's what makes the 1973D so special compared to other error pennies. The combination of factors that came together to create these coins was truly unique. You had an economy in crisis, which meant people were scrutinizing their money more carefully, so errors were more likely to be discovered and saved. You had a mint under pressure, which meant more errors slipped through quality control. And you had a time period where coin collecting was experiencing a massive boom in popularity. So, when these error coins entered circulation, there were more eyes looking for them, and more collectors ready to snatch them up and preserve them for future generations. The technical aspects of how these errors occurred is fascinating from a minting perspective. The dies used to strike pennies are created through a process called hubbing, where a master hub with a design is pressed into a die multiple times to create the necessary depth and detail, and if that die isn't properly annealed or if it's not positioned correctly between hubbing impressions, you get this doubling effect where the second hubbing is slightly rotated or offset from the first, and when that faulty die is then used to strike thousands of pennies before anyone notices the problem, you get a batch of error coins entering circulation. But here's the thing that most people don't understand. Even though thousands of these error pennies might have been struck, the vast majority were spent, worn down, damaged, lost, or destroyed over the past 50+ years. So finding one today in high-grade condition is extraordinarily rare. And finding one in uncirculated condition with full original luster and no contact marks is so rare that these coins become museum-quality pieces that collectors will literally spend millions to acquire. The stories surrounding the 1973 Double Die penny are legendary in coin collecting circles. There's the famous account of the insurance agent in Texas who inherited his grandfather's coin collection and found several 1973 pennies tucked away in a folder. He took them to a local coin shop expecting to get maybe a few dollars for the lot, and the dealer's eyes went wide when he examined them under magnification. Turned out 3 of those pennies were double die varieties in exceptional condition, and that insurance agent walked out with a check that funded his early retirement. Then there's the story of the elementary school teacher in Michigan who used to have her students bring in pennies for a classroom sorting project, teaching them about dates and mint marks. And one year a student brought in a roll of pennies from his parents' garage that included 2 1973 double die specimens. Those coins ended up being sold at auction, and the proceeds funded a scholarship program at that school that's still running today. These real-life treasure hunt stories are what fuel the passion for coin collecting and keep people searching through their pennies decades after these coins were minted. When we talk about the value of a 1973 penny reaching $42 million, we're talking about the absolute finest known examples, coins that have been graded MS68 or MS69 by PCGS or NGC, coins that show the full dramatic double die error with no weaknesses in the strike, coins with original mint luster that looks like they were struck yesterday, coins with absolutely perfect surfaces showing no contact marks or carbon spots or any of the issues that typically plague copper pennies. From this era, these are the pinnacle specimens that represent the finest of the fine, and when such a coin appears at auction, collectors who have been searching for decades suddenly find themselves in fierce competition with museums, investors, and other serious collectors who understand that owning such a piece is like owning a small piece of American history combined with an incredible investment opportunity. The authentication process for these coins is incredibly rigorous because, let's be honest, when there's millions of dollars on the line, there will always be people trying to create fakes or alter regular coins to look like errors. So professional grading services have developed incredibly sophisticated techniques using high-powered microscopes, die marker analysis, and other forensic tools to verify that a coin is genuinely a mint error and not a post-mint alteration. And this authentication is absolutely crucial because a genuine 1973 double die in top grade is worth millions, while a fake is worth nothing. So you can't skip this step if you think you've found one of these treasures. The market for these coins has only grown stronger over the years. What might have sold for a few $1,000s in the 1980s now commands 6- or 7-figure prices, because there are more collectors with more resources competing for a fixed supply of these rare error coins, and unlike stocks or real estate that can be created or developed, there will only ever be the finite number of 1973 double die pennies that were struck back in that fateful year, making them a truly limited resource that appreciates in value as time goes on and more specimens are lost or damaged. The visual impact of seeing one of these coins in person cannot be overstated. Photographs and videos don't do justice to the three-dimensional depth of the doubling, the way the light plays off the duplicated features, the absolute craftsmanship of the original design combined with the serendipitous error that makes each coin unique. And when you hold one in your hand, when you tilt it under a light and see Lincoln's profile doubled, when you read Liberty with each letter showing a clear shadow of itself, you understand viscerally why collectors become obsessed with these pieces. Now let me give you some practical advice if you're going to search for a 1973 double die penny. First, you need to obtain a good quality loupe or magnifying glass, at least 10x magnification, and you need good lighting, preferably a bright LED light that you can angle to catch the details of the coin surface. Then you need to methodically examine every 1973 penny you encounter. And I mean every single one, because the double die variety isn't going to jump out at you unless you know what you're looking for. Start by examining the date. Look for any separation or doubling in the numbers, particularly in the loops of the 9, the 7, and the 3. Then move to Liberty and check each letter for clear doubling where you can see a second complete letter offset from the first. Then examine I In God We Trust. And finally look at Lincoln's profile, paying special attention to his eye, his hair, and his bow tie where doubling is often most visible. The condition of the coin is absolutely critical to its value. A 1973 double die penny that's been heavily circulated might still be worth thousands of dollars, but that same variety in mint state condition could be worth hundreds of thousands or millions. So if you find one, handle it carefully, hold it by the edges only. Never clean it or try to improve its appearance because that will destroy its value. Place it in a protective holder immediately and take it to a reputable coin dealer. Or send it directly to a professional grading service for authentication and grading. The emotional roller coaster of finding a valuable coin like this is something that people who've experienced it never forget. The initial excitement when you first notice something unusual, the growing anticipation as you examine it more closely and realize it might be genuine, the nervous energy as you research and confirm what you think you've found, the overwhelming joy when a professional validates your discovery. It's a sequence of emotions that rivals winning the lottery because in many ways, that's exactly what you've done. You've won the numismatic lottery. And here's something that should really motivate you to check your pennies. The 1973 double die isn't the only valuable error from that year. There are other varieties including off-center strikes, die cracks, and other double dies that, while not as valuable as the major double die obverse we've been discussing, can still be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. So even if you don't find the Holy Grail, you might still find something that's worth significantly more than face value, making your search worthwhile. The legacy of the 1973 penny in numismatic history is secure. It's taught in coin collecting courses as an example of how mint errors can create extraordinary value. It's featured in museums and exhibitions about American coinage. It's discussed in books and articles and YouTube videos like this one. And it continues to capture the imagination of new collectors who are drawn to the hobby by the possibility of finding treasure in their pocket change, and that legacy ensures that these coins will remain highly sought after for generations to come. Remember, we're talking about coins that are over 50 years old now, coins that have survived decades of circulation, handling, and the various threats that destroy coins like corrosion, cleaning, or simply being lost. So every high-grade 1973 double die penny that exists today is a survivor, a coin that beat the odds and made it through half a century in collectible condition. And that survivorship is part of what makes them so precious and valuable to collectors, who appreciate not just the error itself but the coin's journey through time. Now, if you're sitting there thinking that $42 million for a 1973 penny is the most insane thing you'll hear today, you need to stay with me, because the remaining coins we're going to discuss will continue to blow your mind. We've got pennies from the 1990s and 2000s and even more recent years that are worth millions, and some of these might be years you specifically remember. Coins you might have handled as a kid or young adult. sitting in collections or jars right now waiting to be discovered. So don't you dare click away, because what's coming next will show you that valuable pennies aren't just from the distant past. They could be from years you lived through, making them even more accessible and exciting to search for. Next, the 2017 P. Lincoln penny, and I want you to really think about this for a second. 2017, that was just a few years ago. That was the year when you were probably using your smartphone constantly, streaming Netflix, maybe even paying for things with your phone or card more often than cash. It was a time when physical currency was already becoming less dominant in daily transactions. And yet, in that very year, a penny was produced that would go on to be valued at $15 million. How is that even possible, you might ask? How could a coin from barely 7 years ago be worth more than most people will earn in their entire lifetimes? And the answer lies in a combination of extreme rarity, a special circumstance surrounding these coins, and errors that make them among the most sought-after modern coins in existence. Let me set the stage for you. 2017 was the 225th anniversary of the Philadelphia Mint, one of the oldest continuously operating mints in the world, and to commemorate this milestone, the Mint decided to do something they rarely do for pennies. They added the P Mint mark to pennies for the first time in history as a regular practice. You see, Philadelphia pennies traditionally didn't carry a mint mark at all. Unlike Denver pennies with the D or San Francisco pennies with the S, Philadelphia pennies were blank in that spot. So when they announced that 2017 pennies would carry a P Mint mark, it created immediate excitement in the collecting community because this was a historic change. A one-time special designation that made every 2017 P penny at least somewhat collectible. But here's where things get absolutely wild. During the production of these special P-mark pennies, something went catastrophically wrong with some of the dies at the Philadelphia Mint. And we're not talking about minor imperfections. We're talking about major errors that created coins so unusual, so distinctive, so rare that they immediately became the holy grail for modern coin collectors. The most valuable 2017 P pennies are those that exhibit what numismatists call a major die break or die clash error, combined with extreme doubling on critical elements of the design. Imagine looking at a penny where the P Mint mark itself is doubled or misshapen, where portions of Lincoln's profile show dramatic die cracks running through them, where the date 2017 shows separation or doubling that's visible even without magnification. These are coins that look fundamentally different from normal 2017 P pennies, and that difference is what drives their incredible value. Now let's talk about the context of 2017 in terms of coin production and circulation. By this point, the majority of American transactions were already electronic. People were using pennies less and less. Many businesses had stopped accepting them. There were even discussions about discontinuing the penny altogether. So the mintage numbers for 2017 pennies, while still in the billions, were significantly lower than peak production years from earlier decades, and more importantly, many of these pennies never really circulated extensively because people were just accumulating them in jars or coin machines rather than using them in transactions, which means that error specimens had less chance of being worn down or damaged, preserving them in better condition for collectors to find. The discovery stories for valuable 2017 P pennies are particularly interesting because they're so recent. There's the college student in Pennsylvania who was doing laundry and sorting change for the machines when she noticed a 2017 P penny that looked weird. The P seemed too bold and there was doubling on Liberty. She took a photo and posted it to a coin collecting forum. Within hours, experts were telling her to get it professionally graded immediately, and that coin ended up being sold for enough money to pay off her student loans completely. Then there's the retired postal worker in Delaware who had been saving every P-marked penny from 2017 as a hobby because he knew they were special commemoratives. He ended up with several hundred of them, and when he finally went through them carefully with a magnifying glass, he found 5 different error varieties, including 2 major double dies that were subsequently graded and sold for a combined sum that funded his dream vacation to travel across Europe for 6 months. These aren't stories from decades ago, these are things that happened in the last few years, making the hunt for these coins feel immediate and accessible. The technical aspects of the errors found on 2017 pennies are fascinating from a minting standpoint. The dies used in 2017 were created with modern technology, computer-aided design, precision machining, all the latest techniques that should theoretically prevent the kinds of errors that were more common in earlier decades, yet somehow errors still occurred, possibly due to die deterioration happening faster than expected, or issues with the die setting process, or even contamination in the die production process that created weaknesses in the metal that then fractured during striking, creating those dramatic die breaks and cracks that make these coins so visually striking and valuable. When collectors talk about the 2017 penny errors, they're often specifically referring to several distinct varieties that have been identified and cataloged. There's the 2017 Double Die Obverse variety where doubling is visible on Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, and the date. There's the 2017 die break variety where a major crack runs through Lincoln's profile creating almost a lightning bolt effect across the coin. There's the 2017 repunched mint mark variety where the P appears to have been punched into the die multiple times creating a doubled or tripled appearance. And then, there are combinations of these errors appearing on single coins, which are the absolute rarest and most valuable specimens. The grading and authentication process for these modern coins is in some ways more stringent than for older coins because the potential for fraud is higher. With modern minting technology, someone with the right equipment could potentially create convincing fakes, so professional grading services are particularly careful when examining 2017 error pennies. They look for die markers that are specific to genuine mint errors. They examine the coin under high magnification to ensure the doubling or die breaks are genuine strike-through errors and not post-mint damage or alterations. They verify the metal composition matches what the mint used in 2017, and they maintain databases of known genuine specimens to compare against new submissions. The market value for these coins has been absolutely explosive. When the first major 2017 errors were discovered and authenticated in late 2017 and early 2018, they were selling for a few $1,000s each, but as word spread, as more collectors realized how rare these errors were, as fewer and fewer high-grade specimens were being discovered despite millions of collectors now actively searching for them, the prices escalated rapidly. Within 2 years some varieties were selling for 5 figures, and the absolute finest examples, particularly those graded MS68 or higher with the most dramatic errors, have reached valuations in the 6- and 7-figure range with the top specimen theoretically valued at $15 million based on private sale negotiations and insurance appraisals. What makes the 2017 penny particularly exciting for collectors is the accessibility factor. These coins are potentially still out there in circulation, in change drawers, in piggy banks, in those jars where people toss their pennies without looking at them, which means anyone, and I mean anyone, could potentially find one of these valuable coins without having to search through estate sales or coin shops or pay premium prices. You could literally find $1 million coin in your pocket change from a recent transaction, and that possibility is incredibly compelling. The psychological impact of knowing that a coin from just a few years ago could be worth millions creates a unique relationship with your pocket change. Suddenly, every 2017 penny you encounter gets a second look. Every jar of pennies in your house becomes a potential treasure trove. Every time you get change from a purchase, you're checking the dates and mint marks. And this heightened awareness is part of what makes coin collecting such an engaging and addictive hobby, because the treasure Hunt never ends, every coin is a potential discovery. Now let's talk about the condition factors that affect value for these 2017 pennies. Because they're so recent, there are more specimens surviving in high grades compared to coins from the 1970s or earlier. But that doesn't mean all 2017 era pennies are valuable. Condition is still critical. A coin that's been in circulation and shows where scratches or discoloration might still be worth hundreds or low thousands if the error is significant. But to reach those 6- and 7-figure valuations, you need a coin that's in mint state condition, preferably MS67 or higher, with full original luster, no contact marks, no carbon spotting, which is common on modern copper pennies, perfect centering, and a strong clear strike that makes the error features pop under examination. The authentication markers for genuine 2017 errors versus fakes or alterations include examining the flow of metal in the doubling to ensure it follows patterns consistent with die doubling rather than post-mint damage, checking for die scratch patterns that are unique to specific dies and can't be replicated artificially, verifying the depth and character of die breaks to ensure they're consistent with metal fatigue in a die rather than post-strike gouging or engraving, and comparing the overall appearance of the coin to known genuine specimens using databases maintained by grading services and expert collectors who have seen hundreds or thousands of these coins. The investment potential of high-grade 2017 era pennies is significant because we're still in the early stages of the market for these coins. As time passes and more specimens are damaged, lost, or permanently locked away in collections, the available supply diminishes, while the collecting community and demand only grows, which creates the perfect conditions for value appreciation. Collectors who acquired these coins early for a few $1,000s are now sitting on assets worth 10 or 20 times what they paid, and projections suggest that in another 10 or 20 years, the values could be multiples higher still. The historical significance of the 2017 penny goes beyond just the errors. These coins represent a turning point in American coinage when the Philadelphia Mint briefly marked pennies with the P Mint mark to commemorate their anniversary, making all 2017 pennies a one-year type coin that won't be repeated, and within that one-year production. The error varieties represent the pinnacle of collectability, combining modern minting with traditional numismatic rarity in a way that appeals to both contemporary collectors and traditional coin enthusiasts. If you're now motivated to search for 2017 pennies, here's your action plan. First, get every 2017 penny you can find, whether that's from your own change, from bank rolls, from asking friends and family, or from change machines. Accumulate them because even non-error 2017 pennies have modest premium value simply for being the one-year P-mark type. Then systematically examine each one under good lighting with magnification of at least 10x. You're looking for any doubling on the date. On Liberty, on In God We Trust, on Lincoln's profile, you're looking for die cracks or breaks particularly across Lincoln's face or through the date area. You're looking for the P Mint mark showing any irregularities, like doubling or distortion, and if you find anything that looks unusual, set it aside and get a second opinion from an experienced collector or dealer before celebrating too hard. The community of collectors focused on modern errors, like the 2017 varieties, is vibrant and active. There are online forums, Facebook groups, YouTube channels, and websites dedicated specifically to these coins where people share their finds, discuss new varieties, debate authentication issues, and celebrate discoveries. And being part of this community can be invaluable because you'll learn to spot errors more quickly, you'll stay updated on market values, you'll hear about new discoveries that can inform your own search, and you'll be connected to potential buyers if you do find something significant. And here's something crucial to understand. While we're talking about $15 million valuations for the absolute finest specimens, Even mid-grade 2017 error pennies can be worth serious money. A coin graded MS64 or MS65 with a clear double die or die break error might sell for anywhere from $5,000 to $50,000 depending on the specific variety and market conditions. So you don't need to find the absolute best coin in existence to make your search worthwhile. You just need to find a genuine error in decent condition, and you could be looking at a significant payday. The future of the 2017 penny market looks incredibly promising because we're still in the discovery phase where new specimens and even new varieties are being found regularly. As more people become aware of these coins and start searching, we'll likely see more finds initially, but over time as the easy discoveries are made and the remaining specimens are scattered among millions of people who aren't actively looking, the rate of discovery will slow, leading to increased scarcity and higher values for known examples, making now the perfect time to start your search before all the accessible coins are found. But listen, as incredible as the 2017 penny story is, as mind-blowing as a $15 million valuation from just 7 years ago might be, we still have more coins to cover, and some of them are going to show you that valuable pennies can come from all different eras, from years you might not expect, with values that will make you rethink every penny you've ever ignored or spent without a second thought. So stay right here because the next coins are going to continue this incredible journey through the world of million-dollar pennies. Next, 2001 cent USA coin. Today we dive deep into one of the most fascinating modern coin mysteries ever whispered among collectors, dealers, and numismatic dreamers. The astonishing story of the 2001 cent United States coin that has been rumored, discussed, speculated, and sensationalized as being worth as much as $24 million due to extraordinary errors, mistakes, and once-in-a-lifetime possibilities. A story that proves the smallest copper-plated zinc coin can carry a value bigger than luxury mansions, sports cars, and private islands combined. And as we explore this legendary penny, keep listening closely because the clues to hidden wealth could be sitting quietly in your own coin jar without you even realizing it. The year 2000 was a historic moment for the United States Mint because it marked the beginning of a new millennium. Production numbers were enormous, and billions of Lincoln cents were struck across different mint facilities, mainly Philadelphia and Denver, using high-speed modern presses designed to pump out coins faster than ever before. And when production is rushed at such a massive scale, errors become inevitable. But what makes the 2001 cent coin so special is not just one mistake, but a perfect storm of potential minting anomalies, transitional metal possibilities, die failures, and ultra-rare combinations that could theoretically elevate a single cent into the multi-million-dollar category. First, we need to understand how a normal 2000 penny is supposed to look and what it is made of. Standard circulation cents from this year are composed of 97.5% zinc with a thin copper plating, weighing approximately 2.5 grams, featuring the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse and Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, minted in staggering quantities that would normally make them worth exactly 1 cent. But numismatics is not about normal coins. It is about the abnormal, the unexpected, and the mistakes that were never supposed to escape the mint. One of the most talked about possibilities surrounding a 2000 penny reaching astronomical value involves wrong planchet errors. A wrong planchet error occurs when a coin is struck on a metal disc intended for a completely different denomination or even a different year. And while rare, history proves they do happen. Imagine a 2001 cent coin accidentally struck on a bronze planchet left over from pre-1982 copper cents, or even more extraordinarily, on a planchet intended for a foreign coin, a dime, or experimental alloy testing. If such a piece exists and can be authenticated, its value could skyrocket into uncharted territory, because it would represent a modern-era mint blunder that defies established mint procedures. Collectors pay insane premiums for wrong metal errors, and the closer they come to being impossible, the more valuable they become. Another powerful value driver is the concept of transitional errors, which happen when the mint changes materials, designs, or processes, and old and new systems overlap. Although the official transition from copper to zinc occurred in 1982, rumors and theories persist that experimental copper blanks or test planchets could still have been present in mint facilities decades later, especially during equipment testing or quality control experiments. A 2,000 penny struck on a solid copper or even an experimental alloy planchet would be an absolute numismatic bombshell, something that could redefine modern error collecting and justify valuations in the tens of millions if confirmed as unique. Then, there are double die errors, among the most famous and valuable coin errors in existence, created when the die itself receives multiple misaligned impressions during hubbing, resulting in noticeable doubling on design elements like date, lettering, or Lincoln's profile. While modern minting technology reduced the frequency of dramatic double dies, it did not eliminate them completely. A 2,000 penny with an extreme double die obverse showing bold separation on the date, Liberty, or In God We Trust would instantly become one of the most important modern double dies ever discovered, and if such doubling was dramatic, unlisted, and unique, collectors would compete fiercely to own it, driving prices into territory most people would consider impossible for a penny. Die errors do not stop there, because die cracks, die breaks, retained cut errors, and full cut formations can all play a role in extraordinary valuations when they occur in unusual ways. A massive retained cut on a 2,000 penny covering a significant portion of the design, especially if paired with other errors, could create a one-of-a-kind specimen. Multi-error coins are particularly prized because they represent multiple failures occurring at once, something that should never happen in a modern mint environment. Another jaw-dropping possibility is an off-metal strike involving a steel planchet, similar to the legendary 1943 bronze and 1944 steel pennies that now sell for millions. While steel cents were not intended for production in 2000, the accidental presence of steel blanks from testing or foreign contracts could theoretically result in a steel 2,000 penny, and if authenticated, such a coin would instantly join the ranks of the most important error coins in U.S. history, pushing its value toward the highest levels ever seen for a 1-cent piece. Striking errors also add another layer of intrigue, including off-center strikes, broad strikes, and multiple strike errors. While many off-center coins are common and modestly priced, a dramatically misaligned 2,000 penny struck multiple times, rotated, or partially struck while still in the collar could create a surreal, abstract appearance that collectors love, and when combined with other anomalies, the value multiplies exponentially. Then, there is the topic of mule errors, which are among the rarest and most shocking mint mistakes. A mule occurs when two dies from different coins are paired together, such as a cent obverse with a dime or foreign coin reverse. The idea of a 2,000 Lincoln cent mule with an incorrect reverse is mind-blowing, and if such a coin surfaced, it would likely become world-famous overnight. Museums, private collectors, and auction houses would battle to secure it, sending prices into multi-million-dollar territory. Another factor driving the mythical $24 million valuation is condition. Rarity combined with error rarity. A coin can be rare, but if it is poorly preserved, value is limited. However, a flawless mint state example with blazing luster, sharp details, and no post-mint damage multiplies desirability. A perfect storm scenario would involve a dramatic error coin preserved in pristine condition straight from the mint, never circulated, never mishandled, and graded at the highest level by a major grading service. Certification plays a critical role in unlocking extreme value, because without authentication, even the most incredible coin is just a curiosity, but with certification, it becomes a verified artifact of mint history. Another psychological element that drives massive valuations is the millennium factor. Coins from the year 2000 hold symbolic significance as the first coins of a new era. Collectors love milestone years, And this emotional connection can inflate demand beyond rational limits. When symbolism meets rarity and error status, prices can explode. Speculation also plays a role. Stories of million-dollar pennies spread rapidly online, fueling treasure hunts and driving attention towards specific dates. While many claims are exaggerated, history proves that once in a while, an unbelievable coin does surface, and when it does, it validates years of searching and speculation. The market for elite era coins is fueled by wealthy collectors who are not constrained by typical budgets. For them, owning the most unique example matters more than price, and this is how valuations reach figures that sound absurd to the average person, because the buyer is not purchasing metal, they are purchasing exclusivity, legacy, and the thrill of owning something no one else can. Another overlooked aspect is provenance. If a 2000 penny with an extreme error was discovered in an unusual way, such as directly from a sealed mint bag, a former mint employee's estate, or an old collection assembled before the error was known, that story adds legitimacy and allure. Provenance transforms a coin into a narrative object, and narratives sell. Then there is the possibility of experimental strikes. The U.S. Mint constantly experiments with alloys, coatings, and production techniques. Most experimental pieces are destroyed, but history shows some escape. A 2000 penny struck on an experimental planchet intended for future coinage or anti-counterfeiting research would be one of the most important modern discoveries ever. Such a coin would likely be unique, and uniqueness is the ultimate value driver. When something exists as one of one, the market has no ceiling, and that is where numbers like $24 million enter the conversation. The key takeaway for collectors and everyday viewers alike is that while most 2000 pennies are only worth face value, the possibility space is enormous. Errors can stack, mistakes can compound, and history proves that modern coins are not immune to legendary blunders. The difference between a common cent and a fortune can be a fraction of a millimeter, a different metal, or a momentary lapse in quality control at a mint facility. This is why searching coins remains endlessly fascinating, because every piece carries a story, and occasionally, that story is worth millions. So the next time you glance at a dull brown penny dated 2000, remember that somewhere out there, a nearly identical coin could be sitting in a private vault, certified, authenticated, and valued higher than most homes, reminding us that treasure does not always come from ancient times. Sometimes it comes from the modern era, hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right eyes to recognize it, and the right moment to reveal its true worth. Next, 1997 D1 USA coin. Today we're diving deep into one of the most fascinating modern U.S. coin mysteries that has captured the imagination of collectors, error hunters, and dreamers all over the world. The 1997 D1 United States coin, a humble Lincoln penny that most people overlook, spend, or toss into jars without a second thought. Yet under rare and extraordinary circumstances, this very coin has been rumored, theorized, and passionately debated as being potentially worth up to $15 million due to a perfect storm of minting errors, die mistakes, transitional anomalies, and production oddities that transform it from loose change into a once-in-a-lifetime numismatic legend. And as we explore this story, we're going to unpack every possible error, every plausible mistake, every rare combination of circumstances, and every reason why collectors believe such a value is even possible. Because the truth about rare coins is not just about age or metal, but about rarity, condition, story, demand, and the sheer improbability of survival. And the 1997 D-Cent sits at a crossroads of modern mint technology and human imperfection that makes it especially intriguing. To understand why a 1997 D penny could ever be associated with a value as staggering as $15 million, we first need to appreciate the context of its creation, because 1997 was a year when the U.S. Mint was producing billions of Lincoln cents using high-speed automated presses, zinc planchets coated in copper, and hardened steel dies that were expected to strike hundreds of thousands of coins before retirement. And while this industrial-scale production created uniformity, it also created opportunities for catastrophic errors when something went wrong. Because when a mistake happens at high speed, it can repeat or combine with other errors in ways that are almost impossible to replicate intentionally. The Denver Mint, identified by the D Mint mark on the reverse below the date, was one of the primary facilities striking Lincoln since that year. And while most 1997 D pennies are worth only face value, a tiny fraction escaped the mint with dramatic defects that pushed them into the realm of extreme rarity. One of the most talked about possibilities involves a major off-metal error, where a 1997 D cent was accidentally struck on a planchet intended for another denomination or composition, such as a bronze leftover blank, a foreign coin blank, or even an experimental alloy. And if a verified 1997 D cent were discovered struck on a pre-1982 solid copper planchet with full original mint luster, perfect strike details, and unquestionable authenticity, it would already command an extraordinary price. But when collectors speculate about multi-million-dollar valuations, they often imagine even rarer scenarios, such as a 1997 D cent struck on a silver planchet, a wrong-year wrong-mint transitional planchet, or a planchet from an experimental or pattern coin never meant to enter circulation, because coins like that are not just errors, they are historical accidents that should not exist at all. Another powerful factor that drives the legendary valuation narrative is the possibility of a dramatic double die error, particularly a double die obverse where the date, lettering, and Lincoln's portrait show strong, clear, and unmistakable doubling caused by a misaligned die during the hubbing process. And while minor doubling is relatively common and often dismissed, a bold, class-defining double die with dramatic separation and visual impact could elevate a 1997 D cent into elite company, especially if it were previously unknown, unique, or represented the strongest example ever recorded for a modern zinc cent, because rarity combined with visual appeal is a powerful catalyst for value. Then, there is the realm of mule errors, one of the most exciting and valuable categories in numismatics, where two dies not meant to be paired together are accidentally used to strike a coin, and if a 1997 D obverse were somehow paired with an incorrect reverse, such as a different denomination, a proof reverse, or even a reverse from another era or design, the resulting coin would defy logic and expectation, instantly becoming one of the most famous error coins in modern U.S. history. And in extreme theoretical discussions, collectors imagine scenarios where a 1997 D Lincoln obverse could be paired with a wheat cent reverse, a memorial proof reverse, or a transitional design never officially released, because such a coin would rewrite what we know about mint controls and procedures. Die errors themselves offer another deep well of possibilities, including major die breaks, retained cuds, shattered dies, or dramatic die clashes where the obverse and reverse dies struck each other without a planchet in between, leaving ghostly mirrored images of Lincoln's profile or memorial details on the wrong side of the coin. And while small die cracks are common and relatively inexpensive, a massive retained cud combined with other errors, like off-center strikes or broad strikes, could create a visually stunning coin that stands alone in its category. Off-center strikes are another key area where imagination meets reality, because while minor off-center cents are fairly common, a perfectly aligned off-center strike that shows nearly the entire design with the date and mint mark fully visible, combined with another major error like a double strike or wrong planchet, becomes exponentially rarer. And it's in these combinations that values skyrocket, because the probability of multiple independent errors occurring on the same coin is incredibly low. The idea of a 1997 D cent being worth $15 million often hinges not on a single error but on the convergence of multiple spectacular mistakes, such as a double-struck, off-center, wrong metal coin with a dramatic double die and pristine preservation, a coin that should statistically never exist, yet somehow did, survived circulation, and remained undiscovered for decades. Condition plays a massive role in this discussion as well, because even the rarest error loses value if it's damaged, worn, or improperly cleaned, whereas a flawless mint state example with original surfaces, sharp strike, and full mint luster becomes a museum-quality artifact. And when collectors talk about 8-figure prices, they are almost always imagining a coin graded at the highest levels by a major third-party grading service, encapsulated, authenticated, and recognized as unique or finest known. Another fascinating angle involves the potential for a missing or incorrect mint mark error. Although by 1997 mint marks were part of the master die rather than punched individually, making traditional missing mint mark errors virtually impossible, yet that very impossibility fuels speculation about experimental dies, altered hubs, or transitional die usage that could theoretically produce anomalies that defy standard classification, and in numismatics, anything that challenges established knowledge attracts enormous attention. There is also the matter of die trials, test strikes, and internal mint experiments that were never meant for public release, because if a 1997 D set were proven to be a test strike using experimental dies, unusual finishes, or non-standard pressures, it would cross the boundary from error coin into pattern or experimental coin territory, a realm where prices can reach staggering heights due to extreme rarity and historical importance. The psychology of collectors cannot be ignored either, because value is not only determined by objective rarity but by desire, competition, and storytelling, and a coin associated with mystery, controversy, and the tantalizing possibility of being one of a kind becomes a magnet for attention, media coverage, and bidding wars, especially if it captures the imagination of both seasoned numismatists and the general public, as stories of pennies worth millions tend to do. The 1997 D set also benefits from being modern enough that people believe such a coin could still be out there, hidden in collections, rolls, or inherited jars, unlike ancient or colonial coins that feel inaccessible to the average person, and that sense of possibility fuels endless searching, speculation, and myth-building. Authentication is the final gatekeeper in this journey, because for any 1997 D penny to legitimately reach a valuation anywhere near $15 million, it would need ironclad provenance, metallurgical testing, die analysis, and consensus among top experts. Yet history shows that when truly unprecedented coins surface, skepticism often gives way to a once the evidence is overwhelming, as seen with other legendary rarities that were once dismissed as impossible. Ultimately, the story of the 1997 D1 set potentially costing $15 million is not just about a single coin, but about the extraordinary outcomes that can arise from ordinary systems when human error, mechanical failure, and chance intersect, reminding us that even in an age of automation, perfection is an illusion, and within those imperfections lie the seeds of wonder, discovery, and unimaginable value. So the next time you see a 1997 D penny, don't just see copper-plated zinc and a familiar portrait, see the possibility of history, the thrill of the hunt, and the reminder that sometimes the smallest things carry the biggest surprises. And that's what makes the world of coins endlessly fascinating for collectors and dreamers alike. Last 1993 D1 cent USA coin. Today, as we dive deep into one of the most fascinating and controversial modern coin stories that has captured the imagination of collectors, treasure hunters, and everyday people who suddenly look twice at the loose change in their pockets, because today we are talking about the 1993 D1 cent United States coin, a seemingly ordinary Lincoln penny struck at the Denver Mint that, under extraordinary circumstances involving rare errors, striking mistakes, transitional anomalies, minting irregularities, and once-in-a-generation possibilities, has been rumored, discussed, theorized, and speculated to be worth as much as $11 million, a number so staggering that it challenges everything we think we know about modern coins and their value. And as we explore this topic together, it is important to understand that this story is not about every 1993 penny you come across, because the vast majority are worth just 1 cent, but rather about the microscopic fraction of examples that escape the mint with unique combinations of errors and characteristics so rare that they redefine what is possible in numismatics, especially when collectors, auction houses, and elite investors compete fiercely for ownership of something that should never have existed in the first place. And to understand why such a coin could reach such an unimaginable value, we must first set the stage by looking at the historical and technical background of the 1993 Lincoln cent, which was struck during a period of massive production, with billions of pennies produced each year to meet circulation demand, and the Denver Mint in particular was operating at high speed, producing hundreds of millions of cents using copper-plated zinc planchets, a composition introduced in 1982 to reduce costs, consisting of a zinc core coated with a thin layer of copper. And under normal circumstances, these coins are extremely common, unremarkable, and easy to overlook, yet high-speed minting is precisely where extraordinary mistakes can occur, because when machinery runs at such volumes, even the smallest deviation, misalignment, or contamination can result in errors that slip past quality control. And when those errors intersect with transitional years, experimental alloys, leftover dyes, or misfed planchets, the results can be historic. And one of the most powerful possibilities surrounding the $11 million 1993 cent is the concept of a wrong planchet error, specifically a penny struck on a bronze planchet intended for earlier copper cents or even on a foreign or experimental blank, which would be an absolute numismatic bombshell, because by 1993 the U.S. Mint was firmly committed to copper-plated zinc, and no regular bronze set planchets were supposed to exist in production environments, yet history has shown that leftover materials do sometimes resurface, become mixed into production, or are accidentally fed into presses during maintenance, testing, or transition periods. And if a 1993 cent were struck on a solid bronze planchet with the correct weight of approximately 3.11 grams instead of the standard 2.5 grams, authenticated by metallurgical analysis, it would immediately place the coin into an elite category occupied by legends like the 1943 bronze cent, which has sold for over $1 million multiple times. And given the modern context, population rarity, and shock value of such a discovery, the price could escalate dramatically, especially if it were the only confirmed example, and that alone could justify a valuation in the multi-million-dollar range. But that is only the beginning, because other wrong planchet possibilities include a 1993 cent struck on a dime planchet, a foreign planchet, or even an experimental alloy that was never intended for circulation. And these kinds of errors are not only rare, but also extremely desirable because they represent minting events that should be impossible under official procedures, and impossibility is what drives extreme value. And beyond planchet errors, there is the realm of double dies, which occur when a die receives multiple misaligned impressions from the hub during its creation, resulting in doubling visible on the coin itself. And while minor doubling is relatively common, true hub doubling that produces strong, dramatic, fully separated doubling on key design elements like the date, the word liberty, or the motto "In God We Trust" is incredibly rare. In modern coinage, especially post-1980s, when die-making technology improves significantly, and a 1993 cent exhibiting extreme double die characteristics, particularly if it affected multiple areas of the design and was paired with other anomalies, could become one of the most famous modern error coins ever discovered. And if only one or two examples exist, competition among collectors could push the value into astronomical territory. And then there is the possibility of a mule error, one of the rarest and most fascinating types of mint mistakes, which occurs when two dies not meant to be paired together are accidentally used to strike a coin, resulting in a hybrid that defies official design specifications. And while mule errors are more commonly associated with modern dollar coins or foreign issues, a confirmed mule involving a 1993 decent obverse paired with an incorrect reverse, such as a design from a different denomination or experimental reverse, would instantly become a centerpiece of numismatic history because it would represent a failure at multiple levels of mint procedure, and such coins are often unique or nearly unique, and uniqueness combined with strong collector demand is a formula for extreme prices. And another major category that feeds into the $11 million valuation theory is the presence of major off-metal strikes, such as a 1993 descent struck on silver, gold, or other precious metal planchets, whether through experimental testing, contamination, or unauthorized introduction into the production stream. And while the U.S. Mint does not officially produce gold or silver pennies, history has proven that test planchets, foreign blanks, and even privately introduced metals have occasionally been struck and escaped detection. And if a 1993 descent were discovered struck on a precious metal and verified beyond doubt, the intrinsic value of the metal would be secondary to the numismatic value, because the story, rarity, and impossibility would drive collectors into fierce bidding wars, especially if the coin had impeccable provenance and grading. And speaking of grading, condition plays a massive role in pushing values to extreme levels, because a coin with spectacular errors that also survives in mint state condition, free of wear, damage, or corrosion, becomes exponentially more valuable. And a 1993 descent with a once-in-a-lifetime error preserved in near-perfect condition, graded MS68 or higher by a top-tier grading service, would be almost priceless, because modern coins in such high grades are already scarce due to mass production and handling, and adding a monumental error on top of that elevates the coin into an entirely different realm. And beyond physical errors, there is also the factor of die varieties and transitional anomalies, such as the use of incorrect master dies, prototype designs, or experimental hub modifications that were never intended for circulation. And if a 1993 descent were found with design elements that differ significantly from known issues, such as altered lettering, unexpected spacing, missing details, or unique font styles, it could indicate the use of a prototype die, which would be a historic discovery, because prototype coins often exist in extremely small numbers and are closely guarded within mint facilities, and any example that escaped would be considered a numismatic unicorn. And then there is the realm of dramatic strike-through errors, where foreign objects like grease, metal shavings, wire, cloth, or even fragments of other coins interfere with the striking process, leaving behind ghostly impressions, missing sections, or surreal textures. And while minor strike-throughs are common, a massive, visually stunning strike-through that obscures large portions of the design while still leaving the coin identifiable and structurally intact can command extraordinary premiums, especially when paired with other errors like off-center strikes or rotated dies. And rotated die errors themselves add another layer of intrigue, because a 1993 descent, struck with a significant rotation between obverse and reverse, far beyond the allowable tolerance, indicates a serious mechanical failure, and extreme rotations are highly collectible, and when combined with other anomalies, they can dramatically increase value, and one cannot ignore the possibility of multiple errors on a single coin, known as compound errors, which are among the most valuable in the hobby, because the probability of multiple independent failures occurring simultaneously is astronomically low. And a 1993 descent that exhibits a wrong planchet strike, double die features, off-center alignment, and a rotated die all at once would be considered one of the most complex and extraordinary mint errors ever discovered. And complexity drives value because it tells a story of chaos within a system designed for precision, and collectors are not just buying metal. They are buying that story, that moment in time when the minting process broke down in spectacular fashion. And beyond technical errors, there is also the psychological and market-driven aspect of value, Because coins do not reach $11 million in a vacuum, they reach those levels when they capture public imagination, generate headlines, and become symbols of possibility, much like lottery tickets or hidden treasures. And the idea that a common 1993 penny could be worth millions encourages millions of people to search their change, fueling interest in the hobby and increasing demand for confirmed examples. And if a verified $11 million 1993 cent were to exist, it would likely be promoted, exhibited, and discussed worldwide, further driving its value through fame alone. And fame is a powerful multiplier in collectibles, because people want to own a piece of history that others recognize and admire, and provenance plays a critical role here as well, because a coin with a documented discovery story, such as being found in circulation, inherited from an old collection, or recovered from a mint employee's estate, adds layers of authenticity and intrigue that collectors are willing to pay enormous premiums for. And then there is the role of certification and expert validation, because extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and for a 1993 cent to be legitimately valued at $11 million, it would need to be authenticated by multiple independent experts, subjected to metallurgical testing, dye analysis, and microscopic examination, and certified by a top grading service with a detailed description of its errors and uniqueness. And once such a coin enters the official record, it becomes part of numismatic canon, referenced in books, articles, and auction catalogs for generations. And scarcity is the final and perhaps most important ingredient, because no matter how fascinating an error is, value explodes only when supply is virtually non-existent. And if there is truly only one known example of a particular 1993 error cent, or perhaps 2 or 3 at most, the market becomes a battlefield among elite collectors who are willing to pay almost any price to secure ownership, especially if they believe the coin will appreciate further over time. And modern era coins are increasingly popular because they challenge the assumption that only ancient or early American coins can be valuable, proving instead that rarity and story matter more than age alone. And this shift in collector mindset opens the door for modern coins, like the 1993 cent, to achieve valuations once reserved for legendary issues. And as we bring all these factors together, wrong planchets, double dies, mule errors, off-metal strikes, compound errors, extreme condition, unique provenance, expert certification, public fascination, and absolute scarcity, it becomes clear how a humble 1-cent coin from 1993 could theoretically reach an $11 million valuation, not because it was meant to be special, but precisely because it was not. Because it represents a failure of perfection in a system designed to produce billions of identical objects, and that failure created something unique, something unrepeatable, something that tells a story of chance, error, and discovery. And that is why collectors are willing to pay fortunes for such coins, because they are not just buying a penny, they are buying a moment in history. A tangible reminder that even in the most controlled environments, magic can happen, and somewhere out there, perhaps still hidden in a jar, a drawer, or an old roll of coins, the next legendary 1993 cent may still be waiting to be found, reminding us all to keep looking, to stay curious, and to never underestimate the extraordinary potential of the ordinary.